How's that?
Yeah, it's a lovely looking room you've got there behind you.
Yeah, it is. Yes, all
Is
right.
it what have you got in there? Take us through.
I'm
Is there
about it.
some special stuff?
I've got just about everything in there, mate. I got yeah. There's fish. There's stuffed fish. There's things from abroad. There's everything. Yeah, there's no very little fishing tackle. It's all me memorabilia,
Yeah,
from abroad and yeah.
a few books
Some
in there that you've written, maybe.
yeah. There's a few books in there. Yeah, if you look on that side, there's a little thing with it, some books in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. Everybody's had the lurgy recently. I don't know if it's the same in your neck of the woods. Is
Yeah, it is.
your neck of the woods still the West Midlands? Is it?
Yeah, always.
Yeah, never leave the Black Country.
No, I left the Black Country when I was about 20, but I'm still in Worcestershire. I'm only I'm only 20 mile away, but yeah, I just moved nearer the seven. Right, so when are we going to start?
We've started. It's
Have we?
very natural. This one, yeah.
Oh, okay.
we,
Never
we,
even
we
knew we started.
the professional terms are soft intro, but yeah, we like doing it that way just to have a little look around. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like.
no, I love the area. The only reason I moved is I moved nearer the seven for Roach, and of course then the Barbel boom came along and away you go. But it's quite funny how people say to me, about a carp fishing. I bet are you into carping that much? And I say, well, of all the other species, Jamie, there's times when I don't eel fish. There's times when I don't roach fish through a season. There's times when I don't pike fish. But there's every year I always carp fish. There's not a year goes by that I don't carp fish. So I must like them a bit.
You made some carp fishing videos back in the 80s, was it?
Oh yeah, my God, it cut the mill. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, that was a bit unique. A chap who made porno films wanted to make some sports films and got involved in fishing. And he asked Mark Downs to do match ones, and he asked me to do carp ones and pike ones. And I thought, I think he was going to give us about 300 quid for doing it, and that a lot of money at the time. And I thought, yeah, we'll do that. And it earned loads of dough. It was at the time we couldn't have bought it out better. It was just on the rise of carp fishing, and it took off from then.
How did you meet him during your porno era?
Yeah, it was. When you're a big lad, you just meet people like that. No, he actually contacted David Hall, and I was working for David Hall in the magazines at the time, and Mark Downs was as well. And this chap sort of said, "Look, I need 2 stars for the video." And of course, David thought, "Well, hang on, we'll use my stars," and he used me and Mark Downs, and away you go.
So yeah, did you get offered any porno work off the back of it?
No, no. He moved out to Porno because he made so much money in it that I think when his kids started, and God, rest his soul, he's dead now. But what actually happened? When his child went to private school, what's your daddy do? Oh, he's directors of such and such. Oh, he's direct. And then of course this child said, "Oh, my dad's a porno filmmaker," and he didn't want to do that. He's just now. It sounded a lot better being a sports filmmaker. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been situations where I'd have rather said I was a porno star than a fisherman.
I'd
I
have made a
think
lot.
when
I'd have made a lot more money, but I won't built to be a porno star, to be honest, Jamie. But we're not going to.
So Cuttermill, I remember I lived not too far from Cuttermill at the time. I went to college in Stratford on Avon, which is not a million miles away,
It ain't
and
no.
and I remember my dad taking me to Cuttermill when I was young. I wanted to go there off the back of the videos that you did. It would have been 88, 87, I think. I'd have
Yeah,
first gone there, but yeah, I loved the place. There was just something special about that place back in the day, wasn't
there was a house that just dropped back
there?
under the dam, and Albert Brewer run it in those days,
Yeah.
and it was a great start to. It was the start, if you like, of that boom in carp fishing that none of us really saw coming up, and
Mm.
it did. it just went bang, and everybody wanted. I mean, the nice thing about it now is, at 70 years of age, I get people coming up to me, sort of 50 years of age, and saying, I started carp fishing because of your films. And I remember your Bitech Vipers and
Yeah.
talking about pop-ups in jars. I mean, they're simple things now, but at the time they were sort of, wow, he pops boilies up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm one of them people you talk about. I'm 52, and you were quite big when I was an impressionable kid growing up, and in those days there wasn't carp equipment. There was fishing equipment that you adapted for carp fishing, wasn't
That's
there?
right.
And
Exactly. Exactly.
now, if somebody comes up with a new rig in a month's time, you can buy components specially made for that rig. You take something like the Ronnie rig or the 360 or whatever you call it. Like now you've got the Ronnie clips, and before, we'd have been cutting swivels or tying things on. Or in fact, I
Mm.
think the original Ronnie rig was actually tied, wasn't it? The swivel was
Yeah, I mean,
tied to a braid.
it's a great era for people. I mean, people talk to me as though, I bet you like that other era, at the start when we struggled to get stuff. I mean, but I'm glad I lived in that era,
Mm.
um, where we had to make a lot of the gear. I remember reading, Drop Me a Line by Walker, and he developed the rod rest where the rod rest, and it wasn't on the line, and these were incredible step forwards. But now, as you say, but I mean, I've gone straight into that. I love me bivvy. I love me bivvy table. I like my little telly. I like my radio. I like the bait boats and all that. I like it all. I've moved with it. Hence the reason on Facebook I've got 40 odd thousand people. I've just, you know, um, just accepted it, and that's what it is. I mean, everything's moved forward. Footballers don't wear shorts down to the knees now, do they?
Mm.
Snooker players, are dressed different. They're not drinking pints of beer at the table now and whatever, and darts are the same. Fishing has moved on, and it's moved on. That's it.
Everything's got more professional, hasn't it? I think if you look at the content that's out now, and we'll talk about your content shortly because I know you do the live streams, and 40,000 that's an impressive following. But it's obviously it's evolved from a cottage industry to well, they're all professional now, but most of the companies are not owned by the people that started them anymore, are they? Like each company was one guy who had an idea, and then it expanded, and he's gone, oh, we better manufacture more stuff here. It wasn't just a gap in the market. There was no market, was there, for carp tackles? So
No,
obviously your
no,
Corders, your Kevin
there were no
Nash.
there were no carp. There were very, very few carp in venues. I mean, I remember one of the most famous venues when I started was Llandudrod Wells, where Chris Yates had his first 20, and I had my first 20. And if you had I remember being top dog up there. I had 17 doubles
Mm,
and a 20,
yeah.
and yet. About 15 years, 20 years later, I remember going to Patchville with Rob Ailes, and we had, I think, 18 doubles in one night. In one night,
Yeah.
But I do think, and I certainly don't want to spend time knocking anything, but I do think that there's a saying that if it's not interesting at the end,
Yeah.
it's been too easy. And I think sometimes it has become too easy. I think it's become too easy. I think you could try and make it hard for yourself, but I think there's a lot of people come into it now and find catching carp, and not necessarily monster carp, but catching carp becomes so easy that they don't stop in the sport that long. And I think it's because that easiness of it.
You're a testament to that. I mean, just before we went on air, you messaged me saying, "How long will this take?" I'm going perch fishing this afternoon. Like at
Yeah,
70 years old, doing it for what, 60 odd years? Have you
yeah,
been
yeah,
fishing? You still got that passion to snatch a few hours fishing of any type when
yeah,
you can, and that shows that you've obviously done it the right way. And I know we're not going to get political at all, but I've got Rob Hales booked in. I spoke to him a few days ago. He's on holiday at the minute. Um, but he's going to do a podcast for us when I get back. So we've had him on before, but I'm interested. He's grown these massive fish and done the exact thing that kind of you just said doesn't keep people in the sport, and that's those instant big fish. He's growing 60, 70 pounders, putting them in lakes.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can go and catch them tomorrow. The Monument is a fantastic example of that. Um, it's great. I understand he's going to be busy forever, like from a financial point of view.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I completely get it, but I do worry the same thing. Like for the longevity of the sport, it's about the journey, isn't it?
It is, but to be honest, Jamie, I don't know if people want the journey anymore.
They want
I've
the
done
Instagram picture.
I've gone. I've been doing guide days now for 20 odd years, and I've noticed the last 10 years, people about 25, 30, especially people that have got a few bob, I mean, not rich, what they want to do is they just want to do things that like, I'm going to do Kilimanjaro. I mean, people come and fish and say, I want to catch a barbel. And they go, well, I don't want to buy barbel rods. I don't want to buy barbel reels. I just want to catch a barbel. So I'll book Death Sailor up and go with him. And that's the same with carp. I have carp trips. They just want to catch a carp. They don't want to become a carp angler. Which is straight from my era. When you fell in love, you married for life this game. I don't think this is the same now. And I don't think we should accept the same. And what Rob's doing is feeding a few people this, and then it might be a different lot, but it's all the time, it's a different lot. But all they want to do is catch a big carp. Does it mean anything? It don't mean anything to me, but it does mean something to them. And as long as me and Rob have only ever had a problem when Rob takes the water over, and we still argue about this, in that if he digs a hole and fills it up a massive carp, I have not got a problem with it. It don't matter if I've got a problem anyway, don't count for nothing. But I think to myself, that's fair enough. He's created a fishery. And when he's dead and gone and passed on, that water will still be there. There'll still be dragonflies, there'll still be swallows flying over it. He's created something beautiful, and he does create beautiful waters. When I do get upset is when he takes the water over, like Tong Meal, which has become, which is an incredible fishery now, a carp fishery. But before it used to hold Sempan Tench, he used to hold double figure bream. My personal pike was from there, 32.6. There was the odd carp, but no, netted straight out and carp only.
Yeah. It's almost like other species are a nuisance now. I run trips abroad in Croatia, as we spoke about before, but it's the same thing. Like, people go and fish the wild lakes, and like, is there any nuisance fish? Well, yeah, there's going to be a lot of them. Like, you might catch a 2 pound bream, 2 pound roach on the boilie, or a 4 pound carp even. It's like, oh, well, it's like you can't have. People have got so used to carp only fisheries in the UK now that
incredible.
Part of the problems, like we said about the journey, the whole thing of catching fish is problem solving. The river's too high and running too fast, or so you adapt your methods, or you don't go and you go fish for a different species or whatever. But if you just carp fishing, people don't want anything else in the lake. They empty the lake, they net it, maybe leave a few pike in there for any eggs or whatever that the birds bring over. So they'll snaffle any fry or whatever, and they just grow big fish, like, and automatic feeders even like that. I get that it's catering for a market, and I guess even if you was one of those sort of Instagram anglers that just wants a bit of glory for catching a barbel or a carp or whatever, I guess you wouldn't have gone fishing if that didn't exist, right? Because you wouldn't have done.
There will be a percentage that do carry on.
Yeah, and the ones that do love it probably are an angler for life. So I can see both sides of it. We feed that Instagram picture. I mean, bloody hell, get a pair of tits and a half attractive body and put a 12 pound up on Instagram, and they'll probably get more likes than you or me have ever had.
That's it. I think it's a bit like when a load of kids are introduced and they go and catch 50 pound of small carp. And people say to me, oh, that'll make them a fisherman for life. It won't. What people always bypass is a fisherman for life. It's a gene. It ain't something that you learn. I mean, it's a silly sport, isn't it? You go out in bad weather, cold weather, rain, God knows what, you catch it and you throw it back in. You don't eat it. You don't do anything with it. When people say to me, what do you do with your fish? I say, I put them back. And they go, well, that's silly. And I said, well, what's your game? And they say, football. I said, so when you score a goal, do you eat your ball? You haven't got to eat everything you do. But I think what happens is, I think it's just a silly gene. What makes Chris Tarrant a multimillionaire out at night getting absolutely soaked, catching a fish that in the morning he throws back in.
Yeah.
It's because he's got a gene. And I think you're born with that gene. I don't think you can develop it. I think you can become an angler.
Hmm.
You know, I think you can become an angler of sort, but a genuine lifetime angler is a silly gene. And it's that gene that in you. Your parents might not have fished, but that gene's in your body.
It's an evolutionary gene. So the data shows from the EA and everybody, which is why fishing can be prescribed for mental health now. We know all sorts of things these days. But basically, if you introduce children to fishing, 1 in 3 will fish for life. They reckon, as if they've been introduced to it. So, and that I don't think that matters if the parents, because genes and DNA gets passed down. Sometimes it misses generation, but if it's in your family, so it's all evolutionary, isn't it? Fishing was hunting. If you couldn't fish and you lived near water 500 years ago, you died. If you couldn't
Right. Look,
hunt,
Pete.
yeah, if you couldn't go out, or unless you had another really good skill that you could swap with the guy that was good at fishing, or hunting the boars or whatever it was. So it's in everybody, especially men. What is interesting now is the amount of so we had this female Instagram craze where I think there were some people just looking for the likes, but there are now a lot of genuine female anglers that are good. That they're not just in it for the glory. They're doing things all over the place. All the companies have got a few signed up, and they're people that love it just as much as us now, as opposed to it just being a gimmick, and they're getting a lot of attention in a
Well, it's
male-dominated
a sport
environment.
they can do, isn't it? It's a sport they can do. You know, you
Exactly.
don't have to be mega powerful. You don't have to be mega big. You don't have to be mega strong or whatever. Women can be, sort of as good. I've known young girls of 16, 17 that, you think, wow, if she don't get married and have a couple of kids and lose the thing for it, she is going to be really good. And you see them come through, and why not?
Yeah, but that was my point, is that even though it's sort of genetic and evolutionary, like traditionally, from when all these evolution stuff started, the hunter-gatherer sort of era, the women were the gatherers and men were the hunters. But I suppose gathering is still a type of hunting. They're searching out the right bushes. They're still being a predator to catch something.Hether that be, you know,
Normally, bloke.
yeah. Well, whether that be berries in bushes, but so the gene is in probably just as many women as it is in men, just less have the opportunity to try it, I guess. It's always been a male-dominated sport, but we see this with football now. I know it's a bit of a joke, kind of the women have been forced on the men as commentators, talking about the sort of man's game. But you watch some of these women's games now, and there's some very, very, very good footballers. Okay, that physically they're never going to compete with the men, bar the odd one, your Serena Williams equivalent or something is probably going to give someone a good run for the money. But generally, there's a lot of skill there now. I'm watching the free kicks, the set pieces, and it shows that it's just in everybody. It's just been a sport that it wasn't kind of um, I don't know. It wasn't the done thing to just for a girl to just jump into fishing or football or darts or whatever it was, just because men have kind of always dominated it, I guess. But we're all the same, really, aren't we? I think once you're given that opportunity, but given, do you have women book the trips
No,
out with you? No.
no, very few. I've done a few, and more so now as it's gone on. It's years ago, never. Um, but
Yeah.
I think I think I've always give the impression I am a man's man and I like a pint and I like men's company and whatever. I think there's other people that women would say, oh, I quite fancy
Yeah.
going with. I don't think I've had a following of oh, Des Taylor's gorgeous, I really fancy going with him. I mean, Matt Hayes come of that era, didn't he? Oh, I fancy Matt, he's on the telly and whatever. They would have
Yeah.
gone with him rather than me, so that's
Mm.
okay.
Jeremy Wade would get a few bookings, I think.
Yeah, Jeremy Wade again. One of a,
Is it?
a dangerous a dangerous animal. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was because I know you said you've always been carp fishing every year. I seen you put quite a few up last year. Carp. I noticed it flash up. Obviously, all your live streams always pop up on my feed. So like, what does carp fishing look like for you these days? You got any syndicate membership, or do you
Yeah,
fish the day ticket?
I've just joined a recent syndicate for the carp and also some big bream. But yeah, carp fishing. As I say, I've always done it. I always enjoy it. I enjoy it on the surface. I enjoy it on the bottom. I enjoy, and also enjoy meeting young carp lads. It always annoys me when all rounders will go, oh, the trouble with kids now, they don't learn on the canal. They just jump into carp fishing and that's it. And I say, hang on a minute. This kid that's just jumped into carp fishing, he's been in 3 years. He's a brilliant angler and he'll be able to, don't think that he'll never be able to go barbel fishing or trotting or whatever. He will. And if they want to, they will. And what I do find is mixing with younger people. You know, most my era are always moaning about how it used to be and how good it used to be and the good old days and all that. I want to hear young lads that want to go fishing, you know, and teaching me things. They say, you still use that rig, Des? Have a look at this. And I actually enjoy being in a syndicate with younger people, you know, and listening to the rigs and listening to the way they think or whatever, you know, and they enjoy my way of, you know, I might not be so keen on rigs or whatever, but I'll always be sitting in the swim. You know, I might be a second-rate rig, but I will be sitting in the swim where the carp are. And sometimes that's better than fishing in a crap swim with the best rig, isn't it? You know, if there's no fishing, it don't matter about the rig. So, you know, my fishing is, I got the syndicate. I've not gone to France or abroad. I've lost that edge for me now. As soon as I caught a 70 at Rainbow, I set myself limits and I set myself times. I don't say I want to catch a 70 pounder and I don't give a toss how many times I go or wherever. You know, I set myself a target. I had a 70 pounder abroad, a 75, and that was me finished. You know, that was good enough as an all-rounder. What's your best carp? 75-14. That was great. And I've had a few 60, well, 160 as well, and a few 50s along the way, and that's it. But I enjoy the smaller waters. I enjoy, you know, the stalking type aspect. I love putting baits in the side, putting a bit of bait round, just sitting away from it, and like again the rod thundering away with, you know, a 20 or maybe a low 30. Just absolutely love it. Still, I would still say carp fishing in England, coarse fishing, is still my favourite kind of fishing. Although people think it's on the river, it's barbel fishing, you know. And the people that tell me that, they normally got 3 rods stuck up in the air, and they go, "I hate carp fishing," you know, sort of. And I think the only difference you're doing is you got your rod stuck up in the air instead of stuck down, you know.
There's different ways of carp fishing as well, isn't there? They're like that carp fishing got a bad rep in the sort of 80s and 90s, whereas it was like the bivvy tramps, you know, people just sitting behind rods and not working. But the style of carp fishing now, have you ever watched Alan Blair fish? Like, he's a machine, he does not stop. You know, he's walking around the lake, looking in corners, stalking. You know, he can't sit still. So I think
Well,
the beauty.
I sat opposite Tom Maker, at Linear.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, after 2 days, I felt tired watching him. Never mind doing what he was doing. And I spoke to him. It's just an absolute, it isn't something I'd want to do. You know, my fishing has to be partly successful, but partly relaxing as well. I wouldn't want to do that. You know, I was watching Tom sort of casting out, unhooking one in the landing net, putting another rig on, spomming out, and he was doing it for hours and hours and hours. I'm thinking, oh my God, how many carp do you want to catch? You know, he was just watching a machine, incredible angler, you know, honed himself to, you know, like an ultimate level, you know, phenomenal. You know, I've never been off that level of carp fishing.
Well, that's the beauty of fishing, though, is you can fish on your own terms. How whatever you want out of it is there. You know, some days I go fishing, I want to do that match style. I want to catch fish all day long. You know, Croatia fish is like the linear waters. The more you sort of more effort you put in, the spot in, like the more you catch. You know, and if you do nothing, it might go once or twice during the day. But some days that's what I want. I want the barbecue. I want the sun. I want to relax. I want a few beers a few cold ones in the sun, and maybe catch one or two fish. And the next day, I think, right, I'm going to fish hard today. I'm going to catch all day, and I'm going to put the effort in. But it's for me, it's about doing it on my own terms, whatever I feel like at the time. And I know you've been sponsored with a lot of companies over the year. If you felt that pressures come in for that, when you've got
No,
magazine articles to write, or
I've never fell for that.
no,
I'm my own man. Nobody tells me what I do. Nobody tells me what I write. I wrote for the Angling Times for 35 years. I've never had a directive because I'm interested. I know I do enough, and I'm not trying to be somebody else. So, who can I be this year? What shall I be this year? What shall I try and kid somebody on this year? I'm Des Taylor, and I write Des Taylor, and I do Des Taylor, and I do it well enough that people have me for who I am. I don't, change if a Nashi sponsors me. I don't become like, so, hey, bro, know what I mean, bro, and all that. I'm Des Taylor, and I don't, and if in the Angling Times, if they say, can you dress different? Can you have your hair different or whatever? Say it's time to drift apart. I'm Des Taylor, and that's, if you don't like him, that's it. So I've never felt any pressure. I enjoy myself. I'm confident in myself. I can catch fish with anybody,
Well, you've aged like a fine wine. You've not seemed to have changed in years.
Well, why would I? There's occasionally somebody comes on. I don't like Des Taylor, and I think, and it does offend me. I think, why wouldn't you like Des Taylor? I try to defend anglers. I'm always trying to help people. I'm always trying to sort of help them catch fish or whatever. And you think, why wouldn't you like me?
It's an evolutionary thing as well. I mean, it's a golden rule. If you're in the public eye in any way whatsoever, which you clearly are with 40-odd thousand social media followers, never read the comments. Like it's not good, is it? Because there can be, you can have, it doesn't matter how many, 100, 1,000 good comments. Oh, I really enjoyed the show today, or oh, I love Des Taylor. That one that gone, he's a prick, him. Like, for some reason, you forget about all the good ones, and it's that.
What's unique about Facebook is you got a block button, so they only get one chance to say I'm a prick, and then it's gone. It's like if you're in a pub, if a bloke called you a prick, you'd sort it out, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
That would be sorted out, and I sort it out on Facebook. That's why I have a clean. I don't swear. If you've known me for a few years, you know that if I was off here now, I'd be swearing like a trooper. That's what I do. I connect two words together with the F word. So that's what I do. But I don't do it on Facebook. I don't expect anybody else to do it, and I don't want them to insult. On my Facebook, it's be nice.
Yeah.
And if you ain't nice, you're blocked. I have many people call somebody a prick, and then when I block them, they come. Hey, Desi, is that right? You blocked me on my Facebook page. Yeah. Oh, I think that's a bit unfair. Well, join another Facebook page where you can call everybody a prick.
Yeah. My rules.
Yeah. It says Des Taylor Angling on the top. It doesn't say angling group. It says a Des Taylor group. And if you don't want to, obey the rules, then you ain't in.
Yeah, and the older I've got, the less tolerance I have for that stuff as well. Why get into a debate with somebody if they don't like you, or you have a major disagreement with?
You sense it straight away. That's it.
So, do you get the carp rods out in the winter, or you wait until the spring?
No, all year round. All year round. My mate yesterday went. It's a small carp water, a couple of acres. And there's quite a big head of 20s in, and a couple of things. In fact, I took Alan Blair there, and they went yesterday and they fished the worm. The one lad fished the worm. He had 4 fish, up to 19, and the other chap was fishing the boilies and he had nothing. So they are obviously awake. But the nice thing about carping as it's changed is, when I think back the amount of times that we were fishing on the bottom when they weren't on the bottom. I remember Kevin Maddox used to fish 3 rods, and he always used to fish them, a great big yellow pop-up, and he used to fish 1 a foot up, 1 2 foot up, 1 3 foot up, and he'd keep messing around all day, just keep making his tea, never night fish, just kept making his tea and fishing, and he had loads of fish, and most of them were 3 foot in 6 and 7 foot of water, and now, so many people fish off the bottom. you know, on digs, etc. And that's been sort of a thing that's changed us a lot. When you think we always thought carp were hard to catch, and I think they were, because 100% of the time we fished on the bottom, and 70% of the time they weren't even there.
Yeah, well, did you watch all these underwater videos? When you see the fish come onto a spot, they're never on the bottom. They're always, you know, 3 foot up, 4 foot.
I never the underwater videos.
No.
Those are with me.
Do you think it ruins them, or?
It's a no. It's just a personal thing. You know, I catch enough fish. I know enough about fishing. It's my thing against them. I think it's one step too far.
Okay.
And that's just purely personal. It's just one step too far to watch fish and, you know, sit it on a screen and go, it's the big one. It's the plated. He's got it. Why he's got it? And the buzzer goes, and I think it's too far for me, that. You know, I want to sit there. I still want to keep a bit of mystery in me fishing. I still want to sit there. And when it goes off, you know, I'm down pike fishing Tuesday. Yeah. Every bite I have will be a 40-pound pike until I wind down and eat it. And every time I'm on Rainbow or any time wherever I was, it's always going to be a 70. The one I'm after is, you know, beep. Oh, no, it ain't. But at that moment, and that screen takes that away.
Yeah.
You know, you're sitting there going, oh, don't pick it up. It's a shitter. Don't pick it up. Oh, it's a 30. Oh, God, stop. Oh, he dropped it. Good. He ain't come. Oh, here he is, the big one. I'm thinking, what is this? As I say, you know, I don't like it.
I think the anticipation of something is what makes it as good as it is. Because like you said, as long as you know there is a 70 in there, this bite could be the 70. It also could be one of the stockies, you know, or anything in between.
You're enthusiastic, as you know, when you're lying there and you're half asleep, beep, you jump up with anticipation because you're thinking it's a big one. Every time I have a running night for eels, or every time I have a night, you know, carping, you don't. If you knew and you were half asleep looking at a camera, watching a 10-pounder making about, and then a 15, and you're thinking, oh, please don't take the bait. You wouldn't have that. When that buzzer goes off in the middle of the night, you nearly have an heart attack because it's the big one.
Yep.
And I don't want to know. I don't want to know the size of it. I only want to know the size of it when it comes over the net. Because sometimes you play a fish, and it might be a big one, and it's like dopey bollocks on the day for some reason, and you're playing it, and all of a sudden you think, your mate goes, it's a big one. No, I don't think so. It ain't done much. And all of a sudden he goes, oh my God. And it just pops up, and there's this monster.
Yeah.
I remember my 75 with Rob Ailes. There was vortexes coming up underneath. I said, Rob, it's a monster. And Rob said, how do you know that? I said, Rob, I've got an 8-foot leader, a score leader that's going down. So and I could just see the loop. I said, so he's 8 foot down, and there's vortexes coming up, like it's a 20 under the surface.
Yeah. So you know it's moving water.
And then all of a sudden, when he came to the top, he finally gave up the weight, just come up and just come to the top. Man, that's what we live for.
I think that's one of the beauties about carp fishing is you can go from chilling with your mates on the bank, having a barbecue, a few drinks, sat there, you know, in complete serenity, and then it can go to chaos in 1 second, you know. Any second.
A one toner on the right venue, you know, whether it be, you know, you're on a park pool trying to catch that 20-pounder, that 21 park record, or whether it's, you know, that 102-pounder, 110-pounder at Aqua Euro. When that goes off, I don't want to know what's on the end. My brain is saying what's on the end, and that's what I want to keep.
Yeah, and like I said, it goes from nothing to craziness in a split second, and then that's just the start of it. You've then got a battle, and you go through all them things. Is it a big one? It's not doing much, but then it's come to the surface, and sometimes the big fish, they come to the surface, and they come in like a bream.
It doesn't matter how many times you've landed fish or whatever, it always comes in your mind as you're playing it, this kite and anything. Please don't come off. Oh, this is a big one, please, please, please. And then it bores on and then goes away again. You think, oh, and then he comes on the top, flips his head, and you think, oh my God, please. And you can see the hook. He's only just in, and he start undoing the clutch. Just to be, oh man, that's what it's about, isn't it?
Is there one of those that's stuck in your mind, the one that got away? Have you got a good one that got away story?
Well, I've lost all species, but I think an annoying one was a big fish in rainbow in the boat when I knew it was a big fish. And the problem with rainbow, the owner didn't clear the fishery out. He just filled it with water, threw some carp in, and made a fortune. Very lucky, a very lucky man. There wasn't no planning. You know, it's just an absolute snag pit with huge fish. That's getting better because the snags are getting so rotten, they're all breaking off, and we've all bought them in. And, you know, hooking a fish at Rainbow years ago when he first opened it had only just started. The day had only just started by hooking it. Didn't mean you were going to land it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was playing a fish and it went away and you could have put a saddle on it. You know, it was a big, big fish. You could have rode it. And then it sort of turned and went down. And I was right in the middle of the lake. It was done. Rob, get the cameras ready. Here we go. This is a PB. And I can remember it just. Oh my God, no, you're joking. On a snag.
Locked up.
And just broke on the snag. Just in the middle of the lake.
Mm.
You know, and I remember that fish and I think, oh my God, and there's something terrible about losing a carp. Even now, you can lose some of the fish. You know, you can lose a roach even. You've got a shoulder roach, the next chuck out on the float again, you might have one just as big as what you've just lost maybe or whatever. But a carp is still special to me in that if you lose it, it's painful. Yeah. Especially if it's a good one. It's bloody painful losing a carp. Because normally you have to work to get the take up.
If it's a big one, it's normally a flyer, and it's not the same as there isn't 50 others like it, especially in England. You know, there isn't another 50 similar. You know, it might be the one. You know, there's always, I think in it's something to do with the biomass, but in every lake I've fished, there's always a couple that just are much bigger than the rest, and if they die, something else takes over, like one of the ones that's been behind it, which is
moves up,
yeah. So it's I think we've all got those sort of one that got away stories. But is one thing I like to do is scary stories. You ever had any weird experiences or somewhere you felt a bit uncomfortable night fishing?
I've had loads of weird experiences. I mean, I think the most frightened I've been is I was on one of Rob's waters called Atwell, and I was on my own in the bivvy, and I suddenly heard what I thought it was a young person, a young child screaming and sort of, God knows what I thought. And it was very close. And, you know, I think we all do it. No matter how big and hard you are, there's times when you sit in your bivvy and you think it'll all go away in a minute. You know, you sit there and thinking, it'll go away. But this noise kept going on and on. I thought, oh my God, I've got to do something about it. But come on, start acting like a man. And I remember getting a rod rest or a bank stick, and then walking towards it and thinking, oh my God, what am I doing? And you start thinking, what am I doing here? What am I doing here all on my own? And then I got to the fence, and there it was. It was a cow having a calf, and it was the pain in the calf. It was like, you know. And then all of a sudden, boom, as this calf hit the deck, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my life, you know, it was like murder was being created. But I've seen odd things. I remember driving one night and I was with a chap called David Greatbatch and Peter Greatbatch. And is everything okay? You seem a bit concerned. Is the sound on?
Yeah, just my dog barking. That's all. I muted it.
Oh, right.
Okay. They're barking at the door. You carry on.
Along the road. I remember driving along the road, and I was with this chap called Dave Greatbatch and his brother Peter, and we still wonder about it. Out the forest, the Wye Forest, we were going down the river. A ball, like a ball, came over, Like, you know, when you're a kid and you got these little things and you blow the soapy balls out of it. It was like a huge one of those that come across, bounced on the road, and then sort of carried on. And we just absolutely astounded what it was, you know. But no, I mean, all the rest, you know, because I'm a nature lover, there's always, if you don't know much about nature, there's always the strange cause of an owl or, you know, a fox, a vixen, you know, when they're breeding, the noises of different animals you can start getting it in your head. I mean, especially abroad, when you get a boar at the back of you scratching through the vegetation, you know, your mind starts ticking over, you know, what is that, you know, sort of a murder at the back of the bivvy.
What's your all-time favorite lake or place to go? You know, what's your sort of dream spot?
At the time, the one I'm on at the time, I would say my favourite lake that I've ever fished has to be Cassien.
Okay.
Cassien in the early days, late 80s. You know, it was such a thrill. It was my biggest carp when I got there was 28. The biggest water I'd ever fished was probably 5 acres. And there we were. I remember phoning Rod Hutchison and saying, Rod, where do we find the fish? And I remember Rod saying, if you get in the boat and just row round at night, you'll hear them. And I thought, what? And we roamed around. And in those days, because it hadn't been fished a lot, if you heard them and got in that area, you caught them. I mean, it changed, you know, as it always does. But as we were rowing round, I was with Rob Ailes again, and as I was rowing round, suddenly somebody throwed an Alsatian from the top of a cliff, and it went in the water. Boom, boom, boom! And I can remember, like yesterday, saying to Rob, what the hell was that? And then, boom, boom, boom. I mean, imagine we'd never seen 30, 40, 50, 60 pound carp coming out the water and splashing and spraying water. We'd never seen it. And that day, I caught a 40, that next day, I caught a 40 pound leather. And I remember another thing that people don't realize, the clarity of the water. I remember being in the boat playing it, and the conversation went something like, well, there's the first Cassien carp, Rob. It'll make double figures. It was so deep, right? So deep, it looked like a tench. Then it started to come up and it went to 20 pound. Then it started to come up. We went, cracky, Robert, it's massive. And when it came to the top and they netted it, if you'd have said it was 60 pound, I wouldn't have known. I'd have said yes, because we'd never seen it. Was beyond our thoughts. So those were great days. And the lake, was,
that must have been exciting there, you know, fishing. That was one of the premier sort of wild fisheries in the world, wasn't it? Like
when we went down there, Max Cottis had caught I think Kev Ellis had caught that 70 after, but Cottis went down. Max Cottis, they used to make me laugh. They used to call him One Fish Max Cottis, when he's one of the best carp anglers I've ever fished with. He's an amazing carp angler, and he was down there and he caught this 66 or 68, I can't remember now. And when I saw the photograph, Dave Phillips, who was a mate of his, who was an editor of the magazines, put the photo on the front of a specialist magazine that I used to work on that magazine. And I said, I mean, there was such a thing as Photoshop then, but I said, it's a trick photo. It's just been blown up and then put it behind it. You know, carp don't go that big.
Yeah.
And then I remember a phone call from Rob, do you fancy Cassien? Should we go down in it? And we said, yeah, come on. And we drove all the way down in a bloody Defender. You know, the big Defender.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. You know.
You couldn't afford to take one of them there now.
Well, his father paid the money. He worked for the company. His father, who was a very wealthy man, paid for the petrol. I mean, it was 11, I think, with the air conditioning, I think it was sort of 11 miles to the gallon or something. Wow. So, but yeah, it was an amazing experience. I think I went down 3 times, and I never had a real big one, but it was just, again, there was something about a take, Cassien. The take was mind-blowing, as it sometimes is abroad. You know, it wasn't a one-toner. It was a rod shaker. You know, oh my God, as these, you know, sort of 40s and 50-pounders hurled away. It was incredible days.
There's something about fishing those wild lakes where you know there's unknown monsters in there. Every single bite, what we were saying before about that anticipation, but when you're fishing that type of lake where it really could be a European record, you know, the biggest fish you'll ever
Yeah,
see in
yeah,
your life, every single bite is just electric, isn't it? It's like, first of all, it's believing that you've
yeah,
actually got a bite in somewhere that expands. You know, first of all, there's a bit of shock. At any low stock
yeah.
lakes or wild lakes I've fished, it's that same feeling, and nothing's ever come close to that feeling for me. Not women, not drugs, not anything. It's something special, you know. It's
Well, I tell you what I learned years ago with these big waters, that at the end of the day, you've selected in your brain, you've learned over the years your skills, and you're in so many acres of water, and you say there's fishing, and I always believe they're in my swim,
mm,
and that's it. As long as you believe, because it doesn't matter how big the water, how small the water is, the lower your confidence, the bigger the water gets,
yeah.
the farther away from the fish you are. I always believe, whether on a river or still water or whatever, I always believe that I've put enough skill in, whether talking to people about the swims, whether, you know, spotting fish or whatever. At the end of the day, I'm in the pitch and the fish are around by me and I'm putting bait in. And as I sit there, I'm a great believer that years ago, I remember a story about the tiger and the guy that they wanted to shoot a tiger, and there was a bloke up the tree. They put him up and they put a deer strapped around a tree to attract the tiger. And the next morning they went there. He hadn't shot the tiger, and the Indian guy said, "What were you thinking about? What were you thinking about in the night?" He said, "The tiger." He said, "Oh no, no, sir. Don't think about tiger. Think about anything, and then the tiger will come." And I know it's rubbish, but I tell you something now. I really believe that once you've set the traps, one of the best things to do is just forget them and enjoy the moment. Because I tell you something now, how many times it comes right out the blue when you're not watching the rods, when you're not thinking, and all of a sudden, "Are you Jamie? What?" Beep, gone.
It's
Brilliant.
funny, it's funny you say that. When I caught the Lancashire record years ago. It was a fish called Angry, and it's 30 odd carp in the lake, 20 acres. Um, Everybody wanted to catch it. It was, you know, one of the sort of kingfish of the northwest, and I'd moved swim. I was hunting it. I was chasing it. It was my second year. I'd been back to have a go. Anyway, it showed on my spot. I just put a rod out. I put a rod where I'd seen a small fish stick its head out, and it's a weedy lake, and it went down really hard with a light lead, because that's how I fish the weedy lakes, is use as light a lead as you can get away with, because if you feel a bump on the bottom, you know it's probably presented okay. Anyway, it bumped down where this fish, I'd never plumbed it. I just whacked the lead where I seen a small fish nut, and it went down hard. I was like, sweet, that's the first spot. And while I'm setting up the next rod, there's only one big fish in there, like, and it was this fish, and it's chocolatey brown looking. Again, it's the only one that color, and it slid up and slid down over this spot where I just put the rod, and it's like I put it out of my mind. I was like, that's a big fish, knowing that it could only be that fish. But it's like I put it out of my mind, exactly what you just described. Like I was like, oh, well, just carry on doing what I'm doing, get my next rod ready. I need to find another spot over there. And I had a bite half an hour later, and it was that fish. And it's like I put it out of my mind. Like I was like, even though it's probably the best sign
Yeah,
you'll ever get for hunting that fish, but it's just like it. I let it
I think
happen.
when you spend so much time out as we do over the years, I think you make statements to the average angler who might only fish once every fortnight or whatever. It sounds a bit silly, you know, like I've just said, sort of take your mind off it and not think about it. People would think, no, you should be concentrating on what you do. But to my mind, if I saw a fish jump, and I'm not necessarily in Cassien, after I've spent all that time putting some bait out and I'm not going to do anything with that fish anyway. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, right, I'm going to leave this at least. I remember at Rainbow, when I had that 75-14, I put the bait out on a Saturday afternoon, and on a Thursday, that same bait was the one he took.
Wow.
I left it out there.
4 days.
Yeah, 4 days. I left it out because I'd set it. I was completely confident of how I'd put it out. I took it out, I put a stick in, I'd got a round lead.
Yeah.
Dropped it down the stick. And then when I went back, put my rod up, then went back out, then pulled the stick out. I hadn't moved it as I moved the boat or anything. I was super confident, because if you're not, you know yourself, Jamie, if you're not confident, if you're not confident that minute, half an hour later, you've lost another 5% of confidence. A day later, you're going to bring it in.
Yeah.
Because it just keeps mounting in your head. I got that into my head. I was completely confident that was fishing right, and eventually it went.
Yeah, well, confidence and self-belief, like you said, it's the most important thing. If you've got belief in yourself that you've done it right and you're doing it the best you can, then, like I said, you don't need to be obsessing about it every 5 minutes. If no, I know it was perfect, or I know the fish are out there, or like you said before, I know I'm in there, I know the fish are in front of me, or just having that belief, it takes away of all that doubt. And because I do have some of that doubt, but I always catch the big fish wherever I'm fishing, normally fairly quickly, within a season, or at the most couple of seasons. And then I'll start a new project on a new lake, and a big expanse of water, and it's normally low stock. You have to fish in England to catch a big one. And, I spent a few years chasing a big one. I always remember, I'd still always sit there and think, why would I catch it? As people have been on here 7 years after that fish, why would I catch it in all this water? And then I do, but I still get that self-doubt every time I start. But at the same time, I still know I'm going to catch it. At some point, it's like self-belief, but not self-belief.
Yeah, everybody has those doubts, don't they? I mean, I sometimes, you have a day where you think, am I kidding people? I've wrote articles, make videos, and I fish like a complete pillock, but I just go through that. And I'm also dogmatic as well, that, if something happens in a day, I've noticed people are always after that take. They're always after a quick take. They put the bait out, they've set the thing in and say, right, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to fish Brazil nuts, and I'm going to put them out for a long time. And then a day later, they bring him in. I say, what are you doing? I'm going on the boilie. And I think, oh, hang on, what's happening here? Sometimes it's best just to, set the stage and wait for the actors to appear, rather than just keep thinking, I'm after this quick bite. So it don't happen. Sometimes if you get it, if you put it in the right spot at the right time, then you can get a quick take, But having said that, sometimes, you just sit back, sit on your hands, and just
enjoy the nature.
It'll come. Yeah, it'll come.
Were you always into nature when you started fishing, or was it something that was alongside it? Like, I was a kid that liked playing football and doing all the other stuff. But when I started fishing, you get that appreciation for the things around you. You want to know what bird's making that noise, or, you watch stuff grow in the spring and come from nothing and see it change throughout the year. So I think when you spend that much time outside, you naturally get an interest in it, or just enjoying your environment, isn't it? And what's around you. But obviously, I do worry, a lot of these manufactured lakes, they take a lot of years to mature and stuff. But, like you said, they're going to get the dragonflies and stuff later on down the line. But, like, what's your kind of take on sustainability of our angling ecosystem? And
I think nature will always win. And, I mean, when I started fishing a canal. It was in the middle of a council estate, but the canal was full of things. It had newts, it had, stone loach, it had water rats, it had all sorts of things. And I was interested. A good mate of mine called Johnny Galbraith, he was into nature as well, and we were always messing around and, you know, did some naughty things, you know, shot the odd frog with a pellet gun, and now I wouldn't kill anything, you know, but, you know, you do silly things when you're kids. And we were just going down, finding things and bringing things back. And you think, why did I bring that back? Because obviously we were going to die, but you were learning, you know, you were learning as a kid. And when I took fishing up, the guy that took me, Stan Poole, and his son, who I met only the other month, Keith Poole and Stan Poole, and they took me. And I remember catching the first stone loach. And that changed my life. You know, I played cricket. I played fourth team at Dudley. You know, the next step up from that was county. I played for county. I played football in the Midland combination. I played for the Rowley Regis. I played for the county, Staffordshire. But nothing compared to fishing. The buzz it gave me. You know, I remember, Jamie, when I was about 12 or 13, my mother and daddy go out for a drink, and they'd leave you in the house. You know, I was old enough to be left alone, and they'd go out on the pop. And the amount of times that, you know, I've put a buffet and pushed the settee round and imagined, like on walkers, I was stalking those chub, looking over on No Need to Lie, and I was him. You know, I was in the house pretending I was doing it. You know what I mean? That's how much in love with it was. You know, and sort of getting out your cantilever box, you know, in the house and opening it up and having 3 spinners and 2 floats, and, you know, played around with it more than you went fishing. So there was, you know, I was in love with it from the start.
So I bet when you first got in a magazine, then that was a big milestone. I guess it was for me, you know, and it's for something you were obsessed about as a passion, and then to become significant within that industry, like it must have been nice.
Yeah, I mean, I was always a bit different. You know, I was always a bit different. I was different at school, and I was different. You know, I always knew I was different, and I always got something to say. And I remember Tim Paisley saying, you know, that, you know, I was almost like the Ernest Hemingway of the Black Country. You know, the boozer, the drinker, the hard man, and whatever, which I never was, but it was obviously this persona I give out. You know, but what I did enjoy was, you know, I remember being at school and a chap called Jock, what was it? Mr. Cox, Jock Cox. And you tell how old he was. I was at school and he was teacher, and he actually taught my father. Right. And I'll tell you why. Yeah, he pulled me in front of the class. I was a naughty kid. You know, I was always playing up. I wasn't a thief or anything like that, but I was always playing up, you know, making noises and throwing things at the teacher and behind his back and all that, you know, just devilment. And he pulled me in front of the class and he said, "There's this lad in front of the kids." He said, "He'll never go anywhere. He'll never do anything. He's only interested in football and women," which I thought was good enough in the day. But my father said to me when I got back, he said, and fishing, and he said, "Jock, I know Jock, he would have said that to make you go the other way." And now, when I'm fishing wherever in the world I am, whether it be the wife or a mate or whatever, I'm in Florida, South Africa, Iceland or whatever, in a bar, I will go, "What's the most expensive drink you got on the top?" And I go, "Oh, this one, sir." And I go, "Could I have a double, please?" And I always go, "Bollocks to you, Mr. Cox." And I drink it because I think, you know, it did give me that incentive to do it. So I was always, Tim Paisley said you was the angry young man. And I was never accepting things. You know, what they said about carp fishing or what they said about tench. You know, tench was a doctor fish. Doctor fish, I used to use them as bait to catch pike. You know, so, you know, I knew that there were, I'm reading a book now by Hugh Falkus about salmon fishing. And he said, you know, the mystery becomes the mystical becomes the real if you say it long enough. And it's right. People have said things that know sod all about it and write about it. Then somebody picks up on that, and it ain't right, but they pick up on it and they say it again and say it again, and then it becomes real. Like carp, they're bottom feeders, And people said that for years. Carp are bottom feeders, and we all believed they were bottom feeders, and you got to have a bait on the bottom. If somebody said you were fishing half depth in 25 foot of water, they'd have put you in a straitjacket.
And another one was, carp are predators. They eat other fish all the time, which we didn't believe, and you catch
I
them on
remember being,
lures.
I remember being in Cassien. There was a tank there in Pierre's calf, and there was a tank, and there's some Cassien carp about this big, and they've got these. It was the first time we'd seen it, these 90-degree humps, and we'd never seen carp like that before. They were just freaks of nature, and one was about that big, and there was a little tiny fish in there, and it went along and it went, sucked it straight in it, and we went, oh my God.
Just that's it.
Oh my God. And I'll tell you something now. I stopped fishing Docklow Lakes for eels on 30-pound wire, size 2.0 hooks, and half a roach. I stopped fishing it because there's a friend of mine who owns it, and I was hooking too many carp.
Really?
At night, I know it's a very densely stocked water, yes. Yeah. But I was having so many carp runs and so many carp drops, and then eventually I caught one and I stitched it with damaged it with a wire, and I thought, I can't do this anymore, and I stopped it because the carp were picking up there. And I know that Mark Holmes actually fishes for them with the little dead baits, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Certain times. Yeah. So I caught a barbel about 3 years ago with my mate Wayne down at Evesham. Live baits going down the river, bump, gone. 2 trebles, hooked barbel, about 4 pound.
Yeah. Is it that if people put carp in the Severn these days, I used to fish that stretch quite a lot when I lived near Stratford, and did quite a bit of river fishing there, but there was never any carp in those days.
Avon. With the big floods, you got to remember the lakes didn't hold a lot of carp years ago.
Yeah,
they only held a few. But now all the lakes down the river, whether it be the Avon or the Severn, they've all been flooded. They've all got loads of carp in. Boof, in they've gone. So all along the rivers now, there's loads of carp. I mean, I think a chap, what was his name? Mark Law.
Yeah, Mark I know that name Law. From back in the day.
He was a chap that was quite prolific 20 years ago. He had a 40-pound carp from Worcester.
Yeah.
Right in the Worcester centre, in there. And I hooked a big carp. I certainly would have thought it was 30 pound, and it just come off. I was barbel fishing one day, and it was in the day. The river was up, had a take, hooked it, and it went out. Now, because it was going away, and I thought, there's lots of rubbish coming down the river. I held on to it. I was fishing 12-pound line, so I got a chance. And this carp came to the top, and just I slightly rolled it, and the hook come out. But that was a big fish, big mirror that had obviously come out of the still water.
Yeah, there's a daft question really now I think about it. There's lots of carp lakes I know that have flooded over the years. There's always a 50 in the river at the back. Them Leeds ones, the Ericks and stuff. There's some big fish.
Well, I had a lovely 20. I had a lovely 20, a linear from the River Ex in the middle of Exeter. I was fishing for bream, and I was with a chap, Mark, and I hooked it. And I thought it was a big barbel at first. And then I played it, and we thought it was a 30. It was this magnificent linear. It was 27-pound, 10 ounce, I think it was. Oh, it was magnificent.
Beautiful. We've been talking well over an hour now, so I think we're going to wrap it up. Like, are there any challenges you haven't done yet? Have you got stuff that you still want to tick off the list?
I want to catch a 1,000-pound marlin. As for carp fishing, I've got no ambition. I'd love to catch a 40. I've never caught a 40 in England.
Okay.
I've caught them to 39, 12. I've caught quite a few that got to 40. I've caught quite a few. Strange one, this. I caught quite a few after it was 40, like the week after it was 42, and I caught it at 39.
Yeah. I've had a few of them.
Perhaps I've got a different set of scales.
Yeah, need to borrow theirs.
There's a pit near me now that I've joined, and there's a couple of 40s in there. It's local. I'll have a go. I've got no ambitions to travel. I mean, I was in Acton, but when there was 40s in, but I never hardly fished it.
Yeah. That top lake there now, it's got a lot of 40s in, I think. The top lake.
Has, but I don't want to fish it.
Yeah.
I don't want to fish that. As I say, when I achieve a 40
Mm.
my way,
Yeah.
it's going to be very, very special. You're going to read about it. I'm going to write about it. I'm going to shout about it. It's going to mean something very, very, very special to me. So, you know, that's it.
Yeah, I love that actually. You'd catch one this year if you fished Acton Top Lake. There's 20 odd 40s in it, probably more these days. That was years.
I was with Rob Howes as a mate for many years. I could fish the Monument. I
Yeah.
could fish Monument 1, Monument 2. I probably fished that once, twice a year. Probably took somebody on a guide day. The Avenue, I rarely fished. I pike fished it more than I carp fished it.
Yeah. You
And the
can't catch
same
one
with
under
Westford.
40 in the Avenue.
Well, that's it. So,
Yeah, so
I don't
it's not. I like what you're saying because when you do catch one, it's going to mean a lot.
I want one on my terms.
Yeah.
There's a syndicate just down the road from here, and it's got one at the moment, but there's about half a dozen. Sort of coming 38, 39, and they will go over 40. And I'll have my name on one of those, and I'll
Yeah.
be over the moon to have that. It might be me only 40 that I ever have in my life, but it'll mean a lot.
Okay. And just touching on, you've made a living from fishing most of your life. It's been a common theme on this podcast, but with this Instagram angling and everybody wanted to be paid to go fishing. That's not really a thing now. You have to work, whether it be for the company or you work in the warehouses and Corda will make you famous or what. There's no actual job of fishing really, is there?
I
But
don't
like,
there never was. There was
no,
only me, John Wilson, and a few that have made a living being. You see, I don't necessarily understand it, but I remember, I just forget who said it to me. I think it might have been David Hall. He said, there's a lot of good anglers, there's a lot of successful anglers, there's a lot of legends in their own lunchbox, but there's very few stars.
mm,
And if you're lucky, you've become one of those, Des. And you don't know that, and I don't. You never believe that. It's like looking now. I don't know. I'm looking at you. You got a beard. I don't know. I got a beard.
yeah,
It's only when I look at myself in the mirror, I got a beard, and it's the same. When you're successful, I just think to myself, well, when I'm shitting and crap in the bed on my deathbed, I ain't going to go, well, I'm a famous angler. You know what I mean. But but I think what's happened is there's lots of people involved in the sport that haven't been involved in the sport long enough to really know that much about angling. They know about their little niche and they can catch it, but actually, there ain't many Keith Arthurs, there ain't many Des Taylors, there ain't many Bob Nudds, there ain't many John Wilsons that has been around for that many years and got this deep knowledge of angling. Whether it be the business, whether it be the shops, whether it be the trade, whether it be catching or whatever. And I think that's what's, I look at some of the ambassadors for some of these people, like ambassadors for the Angling Trust.
yeah.
I think, do you know much about angling at all? Do
Yeah.
you know much about angling? I know they've made you an ambassador, but
Mm.
what are you an ambassador for?
It was a good point what you made there, and I've been thinking about it since you said it. There's not many stars. There's a lot of professional anglers. There's a lot of people we all know and we see daily on your
Well,
Instagram
it
feeds.
starts for a then disappear.
Mm.
I see it makes me laugh, sort of the most influential anglers in fishing. The Angling Times run it every year. And I was like 14th, and now I'm 12th, and whatever. And I look at all the people in front of me that particular year, they've all disappeared. And
Yeah,
it's a new 12 in front of me. And
yeah.
then the next year it's another new 12. And I think,
Mm.
are they really that influential if they disappear after 3 years?
No, like you said, legends in your own lunchtime. There's people that they work really hard on the Instagram, the socials for a year, and then it's very hard to maintain that. To do what you need to do to stay at the top of that game, you need to be posting all day, every day, so that when people switch it on, they see it. But it's not sustainable. Like you can't do that for the rest of your life. But I've said this to a few other guests recently: is how many of those would have got in the magazines before of social media? How many of the because you got in the magazines based on merit, you know, not because you looked good. It was about being good at fishing.
And the other thing is, and I think it's a good way to end this, if you like, is, you know, people say to me, you know, like early, I'm going fishing, you know, that last hour just before dark on a local fishery, I can get a big perch, whether it be £2 or whether it be £4, or whether I get my first 5. Why do I do it? I'll tell you why I do it. When people get, well, you earn your living from it. Hey, I don't need to go fishing this afternoon. I probably never need to go fishing. I've got enough articles and photos to last a lifetime. Why do I do it? I'll tell you why I do it. Because I love it.
Yeah.
I love to go fishing. And that's it at the end of the day. You know, and people that I think, they expect too much from it. They think, oh, I can write, you know, I've got a Facebook page. You know, I've got I've caught a couple of decent fish now. I want to be a famous angler. That ain't the way. I didn't set out to be a famous angler. I just gradually, in the age of 29, then went into the sport full time and whatever. But, you know, I never set out. I think some of these kids, and what they do is they expect too much. This is a hard game to be in, to make a living. And you shouldn't get to that point. I say to people, I say, hey, carry on with your job. Enjoy your job 5 days, get your money, save up, and go fishing. And you'll last a lifetime. Once you leave off and you start going fishing and you break up, your marriage breaks up, your kids clear off, God knows what, because all you're trying to do is trying to be a famous angler, and you ain't, you know, why do you want to be that?
Yeah, just enjoy.
There's got to be something else, and that main thing is that enjoyment.
Well, it's that attitude that's made you a star, I think, you know, because you can see from this, I've really enjoyed this conversation. You absolutely love it, and it seems like it's never gone away. If people want to fish with you, they want to go guiding with you, they want to follow you, what's the best place for them to find you?
All my summer is fully booked next year. Just contact me via my email or via Angling Times or whatever. And if I fit you in, yes. I'm 73. I'm slowing down on the guide days. You know, there's a few things that I want to do still in my angling life, and I can't do them guiding. I've got the money to do it. I've got the time to do it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be not selfish. I've put a lot into the sport, and my God, I've got more out of the sport than I've put in, because if you do it right and you don't expect too much, this is a great way of enjoying yourself.
So Des Taylor Angling on Facebook, would you say to connect with you, that's the best place to go?
Yeah, Des Taylor Angling, just contact me there.
And I've seen you've been very religious in sticking to it. You do is it Friday nights or Thursday nights you do your live stream?
Friday, I don't know how many I've done. I would think I do 40. Out of the 52 weeks, I do 40, probably 40 Fridays. Yes, I do. And I really enjoy it, because I love people saying, I went and did this, I tried this because you said this and whatever. And I've tried to, with that page, is my page. I can do what I want. When people say, I think we should do, I don't think we should do this, don't mention this, I can do what I like. And I've created my own thing. I've created my own bag. You don't let me play with your ball. I got my own ball. You know what I mean?
Fantastic, Des. I've really enjoyed this chat. Thank you for coming on the Carp Cast, and go and catch some perch.
I'm going to catch some perch.
Check out the website at www.thecarpcast.com. There you'll find extra content, merchandise, and lots more to support the show, including our entire back catalogue of free offerings.